Welcome back to another episode of The Power of Progression. I'm sitting here with my guest today. His name is Tucker Max. You probably know him from his bestsellers like I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell and Assholes Finish First. Now, the controversial book, I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell, is actually written about his sexcapades, drunken nights, crazy decisions, and honestly, the lack of shits given from his perspective. Through documenting and telling his story through his words and his books, it actually turned into 3 bestsellers and have sold over 3 million copies worldwide, with the book I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell going #1 for 6 years. He's credited for being the originator of the literary genre frat-tire. It is only the 3rd writer in history to ever have 3 books on the New York Times nonfiction bestseller at one time. He's the first person to really start a blog and then turn it into a bestseller, then into a movie. But after all said and done, he decided to retire from that life, change paths and his lifestyle and the way he was living, and is now the chairman of Book in a Box, a company that created a new way to turn ideas into books. He is here to get open and real with you about his past, about what changed, and everything in between. He is now a family man living in Austin, Texas, committed to helping everyone, not just the assholes, get better today than they were yesterday. My man, Tucker Max, what is going on, brother? How you doing?
Good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. It's my pleasure. Thank you for jumping on. So, obviously, for those of people that know who you are, they kind of know the background of the book, and there's controversy between it. But let's kind of talk about before the book and before, the events happened where you published in the book. Let's talk about you growing up, brother. Kind of tell me a little insight and tell my audience how Tucker grew up. What was the lifestyle like? Was it average? Was it, a home that was not so bad, but there were some things as you grew, you saw that kind of weren't the right thing?
No, I had a pretty shitty childhood in most ways. My parents were like archetypical baby boomers. They were super selfish and narcissistic and were gone all the time. And I mean literally. My parents got divorced when I was about 1.5 years, and my mom was a flight attendant. And so she spent her time literally flying around the world. And so I got left with family or babysitters or other stuff. So, like as a young kid, that's about as shitty as it gets. And then, they weren't like awful people. Like they didn't beat me or, no one stuck anything up my butt or, I wasn't hungry or anything terrible like that. But they were pretty shitty as parents. They weren't around much. And when they were around, they weren't all that emotionally engaged. So yeah, it was a pretty lonely, stressful, shitty childhood.
And when did these, I guess you could say, the asshole in you, right, come out? I mean, was it always, you were always kind of rebellious, or you always kind of try to push the limits, or did it come out at a certain age that it just kind of clicked and it just went off?
No, it wasn't when I was young, man. It wasn't so here's the thing, like the reason, the whole asshole moniker I put on myself, right? And so the reason I did that was because when I started writing the stuff, it's funny, man, like people don't, what is this, 2018, right? And so the idea that someone would do outlandish things and then honestly admit it and talk about it is like almost, like blasé, like everyone does this now, right? But in 2002, no one did this. No one. Like it was absolutely unheard of that you would admit that you slept with a lot of girls or that you drank a lot and partied a lot, unless you were like a rock star or an athlete, unless you had a special pass, essentially a social pass, you weren't allowed to talk about these things. Like this is like very, very, very taboo. And so for me, adopting that moniker it really wasn't even about being an asshole. Most people who meet me and they're like, even years ago when I was in the middle of my asshole phase, people are like, oh, you're not an asshole at all. And I'm like, yeah, I know. The point is just saying it's being a gadfly, saying I'm not going to live by the rules you think I'm supposed to. I am going to do the things I want to do, and I'm going to I'm going to live my truth, and then I'm going to speak it honestly. And that is what that was about. So like, I still do the same thing. At least I don't hardly drink. I mean, the only stuff I drink now is like $500 bottles of wine. Like I have the complete obnoxious wine snob, right? And like,
Valid and take.
like I have two kids. I'm in bed at 9. I'm asleep at 9 o'clock most nights. I'm
Yep.
up at 6 a.m. Like my entire life has inverted. But the thing, so all of that stuff in my life has changed. The thing that hasn't changed about me is it's not that I'm still an asshole. It's that I still am like, no, I'm going to live my life the way I want to, and I'm going to speak my truth, and I'm going to live my truth, and I'm going to speak it. The main difference is that in the last 20 years, uh, I've matured a lot, and I do it when you're a young guy. A lot of uh, living your truth, you're going to project it out as like, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want. And so it's sort of like, it's about pushing it into other people's faces. Whereas you get older and you're like, it's sort of like, I've already done all this. I don't need to act like that anymore. I already know who I am. Right. And so like, it's just that's just a developmental stage, man. And most guys go through it. I just went through it in public, and that was it. That's the only real difference between, I went through it in public and I made a lot of money off of it. But actually, the one thing I always forget to mention, and a lot, is that I also wrote it down in a way that people who don't know me thought was really funny and paid money to read. So that's also like another sort of difference. But otherwise, developmentally and the things I did, all pretty basic. If you're a dude and you want to go have fun, you do all the same basic things I did. And so it's not, the asshole thing was just my way of putting my stake in the ground and saying, I'm not one of you. I'm going to be who I want to be. And that was part of what kind of drew attention, and then like kind of how everything spiraled from there,
And it turns into, bad media nowadays is good media, right? And like, you were ahead of that game and not even realizing it, because you weren't doing it as far as, doing it to get money. From what I see, I feel you did it because that's just who you were. And you didn't give two shits about trying to be somebody that you weren't, right? And I think nowadays, man, it is so conflicted in people's mind that they're trying to be a certain way to match other people that they're either trying to hang out with, or they're just so unauthentic. And I do want to talk about that, but I just got to ask you this question. So, obviously when you're growing up, there wasn't too much acceptance, it didn't seem like, right? I mean, as far as like, you didn't get enough attention. If they weren't there, there's no way you got the attention you needed. And do you feel that had anything to do with the route you took, or were you,
of course,
like,
oh,
okay,
dude, of course,
all right,
of course, 100%. Like if I had these two godparents, it's probably the only reason I didn't turn out to be a monstrous sociopath, is I had two godparents, Jane and Bill Weich, and they treated me like the way that most people's parents treated them, right? And so like, they lived next door to us, and my mom would leave me with them a lot when she was flying, and uh, they were just wonderful, caring, loving, sweetest people. And like the Mayberry sort of version of parents, right? And they were a little older too, so because they were older, I was like, their kids had just left, so I was almost like their first grandkid, even though I wasn't their grandkid. But and so if it hadn't been for them, yeah, I don't know what would have happened to me. But yeah, dude, like, no one, every single person who intentionally goes and seeks fame is trying to fill some sort of hole in them, right? And I'm squarely in that camp, right? And the more you go after, I don't mean necessarily people who try and like do things remarkable or achieve or whatever, maybe not, it depends, right? But fame, if you intentionally go after fame, intentionally, that is absolutely, you did not get the love and attention that you need developmentally as a child. And so in some way, shape, or form, trying to fill that hole with external adulation and attention. Yeah, of course, dude. Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
and I think people that are trying to get famous or whatever the case is, maybe it is because of that. And they realize that, but they have no idea how to cope, right? Like their only coping mechanism is going out and getting the attention from whomever it may be, right, wrong, or indifferent. What would you, because you've been studying psychotherapy, right? I mean, you've changed, the mindset for sure. What would you tell them from your point of view, someone that's been through it and did it the wrong way? How would somebody cope with that? Maybe they still do want to make a change and add value to the universe and the world, but how would you tell them to say, hey, you don't need to do it in this light. You could also cope with it this way. I mean, what would you tell them?
Hold on. What do you mean? Cope with it? Like,
Yeah. So people that are trying to cope with this whole trying to get attention, right? Just to fill that void or that gap.
okay. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, it's very simple. It doesn't work. like, so I spent a long time in the entertainment business, and I know most of the famous people that you've heard of. A good portion of them I've met, and most of them I've met, and a good portion of them I know pretty well. The vast, overwhelming majority of them are sad and empty and lonely. I mean, it's like a cliche. This should not be news to people. Like if you are an adult, you understand. Oh, right, celebrities. There's a reason that most of them are screwed up, and most of them have awful lives, and most of them, they have all this money and fame and wealth, but like they suck and they hate their lives.
Some of them
There's
take their lives because of it.
right? Because it doesn't work. Because when you try and fill the hole in your soul with external attention, it doesn't work. And like, it's not even like saying fame in and of itself is bad. It's neither bad nor good. But I'll tell you, it is ineffective as a remedy for internal trauma and pain. And that's, I mean, listen, I say this as someone who would definitely, no one has more publicly tried to fill the hole in their soul with women and alcohol and fame and partying than I did. So like, I get it. And there's nothing even against that, man. I had a great time. Like hooking up with a bunch of girls when you're a young guy is fun. There is no doubt about that. And partying and drinking and that stuff can be a lot of fun. And so like, in no way am I saying, oh, all that stuff's wrong. No, I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater at all. But if you do that because you are running from your pain, it's not going to work. It just doesn't work. That's it. Like, as much as if it worked, I would still be doing that. Like, I would never stop. And that's why it's funny, man. That's why all the 40 and 50-year-old dudes you see who still live that life, why they're creepy and sad, because that is the reason. Because everyone's like, you kind of get that a dude in his 20s or 30s, like, okay, that's developmentally appropriate, it makes sense. But for a dude in his 40s and 50s to do that, the reason it's creepy is because that they're developmentally stalled, that they're not, that's not the way it works. And I don't mean it as a shame thing. I feel sorry for those guys. I feel bad for them that they either didn't get that when it was developmentally appropriate, or they have never left that stage, I mean, like, if you were, I was about to say, if you were a 40-year-old man playing with G.I. Joes, you'd be kind of considered creepy, but there's a lot of people who do that now. That's like kind of what Comic-Con is.
Yeah, right?
Exactly. But I mean, but that's
still creepy.
Those people, it is. And those people are they're as developmentally delayed as other people. They're just done it in a different way. Like if you can't face real life, what do? You live in a Star Wars fantasy. Same thing with like drinking and partying and hooking up with girls. If you can't emotionally connect with people, then sleeping with a different girl every night is a great way to pretend that you're close without being that way.
You're so on point with that, man. I had many, many days, years of partying, so much to where, I went to the addiction side of it, right? I mean, it captured me whole. And whether it was addiction to drugs in that moment, addiction to alcohol, addiction to women, addiction to big thing like negativity, right? I was just trying to find drama because I knew drama created focus on me and the situation. So I'm with you on that. Let's talk about those. So, okay, trying to find acceptance. And did you just start writing down all the shit you're doing because you knew it was crazy? Or are you just trying to find like your own way to vent? Like, why did you start writing all this stuff down? Because I think about it, I'm like, damn, why didn't I write all my shit down, right? Like, what made you put pen to paper?
Yeah. Well, so it's so let me think about this. So what's funny, like, okay, so why did I do it? The reason is not because I wanted to write books and become famous and sell them, because I didn't even think that was really possible. Like, I mean, I knew it was possible as a career, but I'm like, for me, no way. Like, that's not something I care about or going to do. I started writing because I was trying to tell stories to my friends about, I was trying to make my friends laugh. And so all my stories started as emails to my friends, like 8 guys that I went to law school with. I would write down the funny shit I did, and I would laugh writing it, and I was trying to make them laugh. And then they would write emails back, and it was like this whole group. Like, this was group texting before group texts, right? This was, except we did an email, and so it was
Emoji.
longer form. Like, that's it, man. And it just turns out that, like, my stuff was very funny. Like, people outside my group thought our group thought it was funny, and then I worked on my skill a lot, and I developed my skill a lot, and I really dove into, and the whole, that's the, it's so funny, man. There, all these thousands of people every year, tens of thousands, spend all this money to take writing classes and to go to school for writing and get their MFA, and I outsell all of those motherfuckers combined. And none of them really ask why, which always makes me laugh. I'm like, wouldn't you go look, if you were trying to be a writer, wouldn't you go
Hell
look at
yeah.
the people who sell, right? It makes sense, but they don't, because they're caught in the status signaling of, right, well, I'm supposed to be, to write this way because that's fancy. Well, okay, you can do that and then just go be a poor person. What I did was I never tried to define or worry about my identity as a writer. What I cared about was the customer, the reader, right? It's the same thing in
Yeah.
business. If you care about looking like a fancy business person or a cool entrepreneur, that might last for 6 months or a year. But then when it comes time to sell, which is all businesses are weighed on how well you meet the needs of the customer as expressed by how much money they give you for your
Yep.
product or service. That's it. That's why the market works, is because it's the ultimate test of reality. Writing is the same thing, man. Like, it ultimately is. It's just weird. Uh, 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 um, there's a weird deviation in the writing market because there are a small group of influential people who tell everyone a certain type of writing is better and more influential, except it doesn't sell. You know,
Yeah.
James Patterson sells 20 million books a year, and all the elitist literary snobs look down on his stuff, and they don't sell a million books combined with all of them, right?
Yep.
So it's sort of like, well, okay. So that's why my writing did well, man, is because I worked hard at it, but then I only focused on, I mean, the crucible that I grew up in was making my friends laugh. And then it turns out that my friends were a really good proxy for millions of other people. And so all I cared about was making people laugh. Like, that's it. It's so funny. That's why there have been, my book agent estimates he's seen 20,000 proposals of people who, like, were trying to be the next Tucker Max or the female Tucker Max or the whatever, the
Yep.
black Tucker Max or the monk Tucker Max or whatever. And he's never ever repped one of them, and none of those have taken off. And the reason is because they thought my stuff was popular because I was talking about myself, but it wasn't. You can read my entire lexicon and you can know almost nothing about me.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. Because it seems like the books are about me, but they're not. I am just the vehicle to entertain the reader. And that's what everybody missed. At least everyone who's trying to to rip me off missed. And they were all narcissists. And so they all like, oh yeah, I can get drunk and throw up on myself and write stuff focused on myself. And they would write these ridiculous, awful, I mean, they're all over the place. Like, it's self-referential nonsense. And no one cared, man. No one cared.
They were trying, right? I think they were being unauthentic. Goes back to what we were saying before. They weren't being authentic to who they truly were. They saw you doing something that they're like, shit, if he can go ahead and do what he's doing to make money, I think they thought that they could do the same thing. And you're a great storyteller. And that's what it boils down to is you're a story seller, right? And the stories that happen, they happen to be true. And are there any stories in the book for anybody that as whether they've seen a movie or they read a book, is there anything that was totally far-fetched, or was everything legit? I mean, after many years later, have you come, I haven't heard anything to say, you know what, there are a few things in there that, I obviously, blew up a little bit to make it more of a
No.
laugh.
Dude, I like, if anything, like two or three of the most ridiculous things that ever happened to me I didn't put in the book because like they're not even believable. Like that's
Yeah.
I mean, like that's the problem. Like, there's a couple things, man. A couple things happen in Hollywood that like no one would just like. They're just not. No. Like,
All right, I need to know. Give me one,
so,
man. I need to, for my listeners, give me one that was not in the book that you think is so far-fetched they won't believe. And I'll tell you right now,
okay.
guys,
All right.
I totally believe this fucking guy, everything he says, because he
No,
isn't bullshit.
here's one that my friends that I went to law school with don't believe. So, so if you don't believe this, I won't. I was like, okay, well, get in line with my buddies, right? It's entirely possible that there are at least one pretty famous, like Hollywood baby, that's mine, that no one thinks is mine, but thinks is the dad's.
How
And
old
I'm
is
not
this?
gonna tell you what baby or what girl or what dad,
How about the age
but
of the baby?
no, no, no,
No,
no, nothing.
it's, oh, man. Can I ask you how the wife feels about that, or she not know?
She's an empty actress whore. She doesn't care. Like, why would she care? She only cares about being in magazines. That's why
Yeah.
she's an actress.
Yep. Oh man, I just love it because you're so freaking real. Like no matter what it is, and I think people could take note of that. You don't need to be like Tucker Max. You need to be like the first you, right? Like people all the time, like I want to be the next Tony Robbins. I want to be the next this. Like shit, be the first John Marrone, right? Be the first you, whatever that looks like. And if that makes you money, like it made him money, then go do it. Let's fast forward. So you have this crazy book. And all of a sudden, they ask you to write a movie. When did that happen? When did they ask you to write a movie? How long after the book was it? Because I know you produced it, right? Or you kind of
Yeah,
got
I
involved
was on the production team. I wasn't the main producer
Yeah.
because I've never done a movie before. But so no, I mean Hollywood came knocking before my book even first came out. They're always desperate for stories and stuff, and especially any new voice or whatever. Like that's they've been desperate for that for. I mean, they're constantly desperate for content. So I started working on the screenplay and the first it started as a TV series, which I sold twice before and then the rights reverted back before we did a movie. So that was whatever it was, 05, 06. So yeah, it was about actually, yeah, 04. It was back and forth. So I'd be working on both at the same time. The first book came out in 06, and then we really got moving on the movie in late 07, early 08. Late 07. Yeah.
And what would you feel about the movie, the end product?
I hated it. Like straight up, I hated it.
Why? I mean, if you had your hand in it, why did you hate it? How come you didn't have the opportunity to
Man,
change whatever you wanted to change?
hold on. Just because I was a creative influence on the movie, number one, doesn't mean I did a good job, and number two, doesn't mean I like it.
Yeah.
You know. Um. So first off, oh man, God. I mean, that's its own podcast. That's its own series of podcasts. But
Yeah,
all
something
right. So
brewing.
right. The brief answer. I didn't really understand what I was doing movie wise. So we wrote a great screenplay, but there was just the learning curve was very steep for me, and I didn't climb it fast enough. So there were a lot of things I didn't understand about movies. That was a problem, and then that was a big problem. And then the other problem was I picked the total wrong crew. Like the director is a disaster. He's a joke. The production team they weren't bad, but they probably weren't the right team. The actors were good. I thought they were all good actors. I'm not
Yeah.
sure it was the right casting, but they were all excellent actors. So probably with the right director, it would have worked. Yeah, there were just a few other. It just like a movie's a very complicated thing. There's so many moving parts, and you really have to know what you're doing. And I like 60% knew what I was doing, which is just not remotely enough.
Yeah. Would you redo it if the opportunity came knocking?
I mean, the opportunity exists now, dude. I can go do it again if I want. I own the underlying rights, which is that's
But
unheard of in Hollywood, and I got that. I worked that deal, so I still own all the underlying rights,
that's awesome.
and IP. I don't know, dude. It's still. I have other things to do right now in my life that are more important to me.
Hmm.
And honestly, it's the wrong time. Socially, the phase that we're in, total wrong time to tell those stories.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's almost like you're not gonna, burn the bridge behind you, but sometimes you can't move forward looking, back. But there might be a time and place, right? There might be a time and place. What made
Mhm.
you, I'm not gonna say you change because I don't think you change. I just think that through our lessons that we learn, and we kind of peel back a new layer of who we are through the obstacles that we create or that happen to us. What made that shift that took you from what you were doing as far as the lifestyle, I guess you could say you were living in what made it shift into what you're currently doing, right now?
Dude, I changed a lot, man. Like, make no mistake about it. I mean, my fundamental underlying temperament is who I am as a human.
Hmm.
Is probably not, but I've changed so much. I've changed. My son, my oldest kid, my son is 4 years old, and I feel like I had him a decade ago at least. Like, I've changed so much in the
Just in
last
the
4
last few
years.
years, yeah.
Right, right. Like I almost can't even remember my life before him and my wife. So that would be about 5.5 years or whatever. Um, all right. So, I mean, so much changed with me, dude. It kind of gets back to what we were talking about at the beginning, man. I was just at the point where I realized like I had achieved all the fame and financial success and glory and all the stuff and status that I more than I even dreamed I would. And I wasn't happy. And it was like I wasn't unhappy. Like I was way better. Being rich and famous is way better than being broken and anonymous,
Yeah,
right? So I
don't
was
don't, don't get it
better,
twisted, guys.
right? I
Yeah.
was way better. But like I was only so like my life was 10 times better objectively,
Hmm.
but emotionally I felt like one maybe twice as good or something, right? So it was like this doesn't make sense, like or only 50% better. Like I should be way better. Like and I just wasn't where I felt I should be. Um, so then I fixed everything else externally in my life. So then I got the best shape ever. And so like I remember I was like 35, 36, and I had like 6% body fat and then like ridiculous shape. And I'm not even kidding. One time I got pneumonia. This is a absolute true story. I'll never forget this. I got walking pneumonia, and like I had this a little bit of a cough, and like just a little, and then like a right lower quadrant pain. And my girlfriend at the time was a nurse, and she couldn't figure out. She thought I had kidney gallstones or some nonsense. She could not figure out what was wrong, because otherwise I was fine. I was healthy, like no problems. So eventually it got kind of bad. The pain did and whatever. Took me to the ER. They did X-rays, and the doctor comes in, and she's like, she'd already done a full exam on me, and she couldn't understand what was wrong either. She's like, yeah, other than the pain, and you got a little bit of a tiny cough, and it was barely anything. She's like, you seem fine. She comes in, she goes, okay, I've never seen this shit in my life. And she puts up the X-ray, and my lungs are white, which means pneumonia. And
Yeah.
she's like, you have pneumonia. And she's like, I have never seen anyone with pneumonia this healthy. She's like, I don't even know how this is possible. And so then they think something else must be. Oh no, sorry, but yeah, before the X-rays, they send me down to get a CAT scan and MRI, and full CAT scan. And the doctor, I'm not even because he was on with the. I heard him with the doctor, the radiologist on with the doctor, and she goes, uh, the radiologist was a guy, and he goes, "Who is this guy? Is this some professional athlete? This dude is ripped." And I remember laughing, and I remember joking with my girlfriend. I'm like, "Yeah, that's right. My medical diagnosis is ripped."
Ripped.
Exactly. And then the doctor's like, yeah, they did the X-rays, and they're like, "Yeah, you have pneumonia. I've never heard of this." So that's how good a shape I was in at like 36, right? Which is
Yeah.
nuts. And everything dialed into my life, and still not that happy, right? Not all the life hacker optimization stuff, like all of that. And so then at that point, when you're like 35, 36, and your life is as perfect externally as it can get, and you're not like where you want to be, then at some point you got to start saying, okay, I guess the problem is inside,
Inward. Yeah.
right? And I got to start looking inward, and I've got to start dealing with these emotions and these problems and these traumas that I have never even recognized really that I have. I guess I kind of knew intellectually, but you know, I knew my parents weren't that good and this and that. It wasn't news to me, but like knowing that like your parents weren't there when you were a kid and dealing with that pain are totally different things. So
Yeah.
that's when I started psychoanalysis, and I spent I went 4 times a week for 4 years. And so, yeah, dude, like no joke, for an hour a day, man, I was
I did
like,
that for
I was in,
probation.
huh?
I said I did that for probation.
Yeah, no, right. See, I wasn't picking up trash, right? Like I went like, I mean, I had a serious high level analyst, like she was
Yeah.
no joke. And so I didn't want to spend, you know, forever. And I didn't want, like, I wanted to get in and like, let's get your hands in, let's go. Right.
Mhm.
And so that worked really well for a long time, taught me a lot, man, connected my conscious to my unconscious and all that stuff. And I understood my inner life, and I got a good map of it. And I got a lot of stuff figured out. Not everything, but a lot. And then I started meditating my final year of analysis. That really helped accelerate it, made things a lot better. And then, but it kind of ran its course. I kind of had nowhere else to go. I'd kind of thought through everything you can think through. Then a couple of years after, I met a shaman, like a Peruvian shaman, and I'm like, okay, this is nonsense. And she convinced me to like just do one session. She's like, for free. Let me show you. So did it, and I was like, okay, I feel a little better. But this is like, you know, if I lay down for half an hour for any reason, I'm going to feel a little better. So this is whatever. And then that night, my wife was like, what's going on? Like, I'm like, what? What do you mean? She's like, you're so much calmer today. Like, you feel way better. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And I was like, and I had not told her I had done that, right?
Wow.
And so I was like, oh,
Aura.
shit. So I had to do this then. So I'm like, even if it's just placebo effect, even if it's total nonsense, something is going on.
Yep.
So I did that for about a year and a half, and it worked pretty well, but then it kind of ran its course. And so then about a year ago, I started to kind of like realize there was a bedrock of underlying shit that I had not gotten to. And I'd done like all the work I could, all the thinking I could. And, you know, I have some good friends who are really into sort of plant-based medicines, MDMA, psychedelics, things like that. Two of them specifically have been telling me for years, dude, you need MDMA. Like, that's your thing. Like MDMA and psilocybin, both of them, like, those are the two things that are going to break you open. And so I did my first MDMA therapy session in September, and then another one a month later. And then I'm going to do another one after Christmas.
Really?
And dude, they were mind blowing, man. It was like years of therapy, like boom. Now, granted, I have like it's not a magic pill, right? It doesn't just like make everything better. But basically, like non-scientifically, right? What it basically does is it drops your brain's defenses, and so like your brain feels safe, and then all the trauma that is deep and hidden and repressed, that your brain's afraid to bring up, it basically feels safe to bring it up. And so that you can process it, right? So like, make no mistake, MDMA is fucking intense, man.
Yeah.
Like, the shit that you're running from is coming for you. But the cool thing about it, unlike ketamine or ayahuasca or all these other things where it's like you don't have a choice. Like, once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
And good luck, right?
You're locked in, bro.
Right. MDMA is like your friend. It's very calm. It's very gentle. You can reduce the impact really greatly immediately. Like, when you're doing it therapeutically, you put on an eye shade and you lay back and you kind of like are within yourself. If it gets overwhelming, you can take your eye shade off and you can sit up, and the impact goes down 90%, right? It's really, but dude, make no mistake, man. Like, it's funny. Like, I wrote a 9,000 word piece about this because so many people were asking me about it. So I wrote like everything, all my experiences, what they were like. And a lot of people came to me and like, I want to do it. And I'm like, okay, have you done any therapy? And most of them like, no. And I'm like, okay, I would not, don't do MDMA. Like, that's not where
therapy
you start.
first.
Right. Of course, dude. Like, so doing MDMA first would be like someone 400 pounds saying, okay, I want to get in shape. Let me go do like CrossFit with Jason Khalipa. It's like, no, that doesn't make sense. First, you need to start eating right and walking around the block for 2 hours a day. Just start there, and you'll drop 100 pounds in a year. Then you can start. Then you get into maybe running or what, like, move up. Like, you don't start right, CrossFit at 400 pounds. It's definitely not intense CrossFit. But you
No.
want to go do light stuff, cool, great, go. Because at 400 pounds, anything is going to work. And same thing, like someone who hasn't done any therapy or, did it for 2 months, 3 years ago, MDMA is the deep end of the pool. And maybe not the deepest end of the pool, but it's in the deep end, right?
Yeah.
It's not quite there with ibogaine and some others, but it's deep. And if you don't have a therapeutic context to put it into, then it can be, it's not that it's going to hurt you necessarily, although it will bring up intense stuff. It will bring up very intense stuff. And if you have nowhere to put it, then it may leave you a little bit worse off, or it may just kind of go away and you just don't know how to deal with it, right? Whereas if you read, you can just Google Tucker Max MDMA and my Medium piece will come up, and you'll see kind of how I was able to really process, because I wrote it all down as it was happening, not the session, but afterwards, over the weeks after, and like my raw sort of unedited thoughts. And you can see it's like, okay, this guy's done therapy. He understands where to put these emotions and how to process them, right?
That's huge.
At least at the level I'm at. It's not like I still think I'm gonna do MDMA at least once more, maybe 2 or 3 more times, right? Probably won't take more than 6 sessions, because I have some deep trauma, but not terrible. Like I'm not at the, like war-torn Iraqi vet or like, horrendous gang rape victim level of trauma, thank God. So I don't need the 8-10 sessions, thank God, or 30 sessions. Like I'll probably get it, 4, 5, 6. But then after that, I think I'm going to move into, in fact, I know I am, into psychedelics. I'll probably start with psilocybin and then maybe LSD, because there's still some deep stuff within me, maybe not even traumatic, just some fears or whatever that I'm not, there's a lot of myself I need to explore, or I want to explore, right? And so that's probably the past. So I'm like, it's like in the story of my life, I'm only somewhere in the middle, man. There's quite a bit to come with this.
That's the more that you look at your obstacles and could learn from them, right? And it just reveals a new version of you, as I said before. I'm speaking with Joe Rogan in February, and he always talks about kind of similar thing, and he always talks about different ways to meditate and do psychedelics and everything. He's always bringing that up. So it's just interesting hearing it from you as well, from your perspective. And it's pretty phenomenal to know that it really does work but there's a process behind it. Mm-hmm. Now, your wife, you guys been together for 5 years?
Yep.
5 years. When she first met you, did she know you what was that experience like? Were you like, hey, I'm the guy that wrote these books? Or she like, hey, you're the fucking guy that wrote those books?
No, she really didn't know who I was at all. She never read any of my stuff. I mean, she Googled me, obviously, and then she was like, what is this nonsense?
Don't
like
they all?
She didn't, yeah, like, right. She didn't know. So no, it wasn't, that was actually one of the things that it was probably pretty necessary for me to find a woman who didn't know who I was, not for the reason you're thinking, not like, oh, so you like can fool her and she doesn't know. No, because I'm gonna tell her first, like, you should go check this out. It's the other way. It's because what I had done previously, even though I'd met and dated some great women, they were all like kind of women who were looking to date Tucker Max, like Tucker Max in quotes, right? They were like kind of women in my orbit, and that sort of imbalance of relationship never works, because then it's just pure objectification, right? She's dating me because I'm quote Tucker Max, and then like I'm dating her because she's hot and this and that or whatever it is.
Never ends good.
Right. And then it's not a relationship. It's just two people. It's like going to the store, like, so I needed someone who dealt with me for me and not for who they imagined I was.
That's huge. And now does she have people come up to her and like say anything about you and like how does she deal with it? She seems like a pretty cool chick to where she probably just blows it off. But is there that relationship battle? Because I don't even think of it your Tucker Max or not. Like people have these issues where the wives or even the husbands get approached by the past basically, and they're like, hey, like, did you know your husband used to do this? Did you know your wife used to do this? And people deal with it differently. So I would just love to hear, because yours is kind of extreme, right? How she deals with it, kind of how you guys build a communication piece around it.
I mean, she doesn't have any issue with it. Like, she
just blows it off when people say, if anybody said anything.
No. So look, here's a couple things. So it's funny, like insecure women have this idea that, oh, if my man has a past, that's bad. It's actually the other way around. You want your man to have experience, because if he doesn't, you're going to have an inexperienced dude, which who wants that, or you're going to have a guy who's got something he's got to get out, right?
Mm.
Whereas like with me,
So
like,
true.
I mean, there's nothing that could happen that hasn't already happened. Like some hot girl hits on me, it's like, I know how that game's gonna go. It doesn't bother me. Like, it's easy for me. No, sorry. Like, whereas like if you were like a dork growing up and attractive women never talk to you, and you get married, and then all of a sudden you blow up, and now you don't know how to deal with attractive women approaching you. I
Mm.
lived that for a decade. So like, it's not a non-issue to me, you know? And,
Yeah.
a guy who's been through that, who decides he's ready to commit and then commits, like, and I decided I was ready for the right person before I met her, right? She didn't, like, the trope about, the girl winning or changing the bad boy is nonsense. No, you decide you're going to make a change, you make the change, and then when you're ready, you meet the right person. That's exactly how it happened with me. So like, that's not an issue. And then like, I would never marry the type of woman who is going to govern her self-worth and her actions based on what random other people think, is not the type of woman who's going to be attracted to me or want to date me. So no, my wife is not like that. She thinks for herself, and she makes up her own mind. And so she doesn't even blow it off. She doesn't need to blow it off. It's not even a thing to her.
Doesn't even
Like,
affect, doesn't even phase her.
right. It's like, not even what some random people think or don't think is just
Yeah.
not, it's not a relevant thing to her.
Yeah, I had to ask just because I think that's on a lot of people's mind of like, how did that happen as far as how does she respond to it? But I love that. And now me and my wife talk a lot about, because I have an 18-month-old daughter, and she's always like, John, she's not going to grow up like you as far as, getting crazy, smoke a pot at 12 and, just kind of just doing all the crazy things you did. And so I also want her to have these experiences to experience life. And I would just love to kind of hear where you're at with that, because you have two beautiful children, and I know they mean the world to you. Are you going to try to like protect them? Like, what are your thoughts on it? Are you going to let them go with a certain leash, but not too far away? Are you going to care if they find out what dad, what the books say when they turn 18, they read them or whatever the case is?
No, so I only see my job as a parent as I have two jobs. One is to unconditionally love and accept my children and make sure they know that, right? And two is to help them prepare to live their lives the way that they want to,
Mm.
right? And like, that's a really important, the way I phrase that is very important,
Yeah.
because most parents think or act as if they think their job is to make sure that their kids reflect well on them. That's fucking bullshit.
Whew.
It's their life, not yours and not mine. Bishop is living his life, not mine, and Vaughn is living her life, not mine. And it is not my job, nor even my role, nor do I have a right to tell them and dictate to them who they are and what they should and shouldn't do. Now, I'm obviously going to expose them to as much as possible, help guide them in the way that I think best. But when it comes down to it, my job is to help them learn everything they can so that they can make their own decisions. So all right, so to answer the question, on one hand, I absolutely want to protect them from like unnecessary or serious harm, right? Like, I don't want my kids run over by a car, right? I don't want them, developing, measles or whatever the hell it is, right? But at the same time, the worst thing I can do as a parent is protect them from stress or trauma or struggle, right? Because the only way they're going to learn to be an effective person is to be stressed and to be traumatized and to fail, but then to move past it, right? There's nothing wrong with pain and struggle and trauma. By themselves, they are not bad. What's bad is when you are not able as a child to process those with an empathic context around you, right? So like, I'll give you like, I mean, look, my son falls down all the time, like every 4-year-old, right? So he'll fall off the sofa. Like falling off the sofa can be either like if no one's there, if I'm like, oh, that's what you get, you stupid brat, and I kick him and walk off, then that's going to be way worse, right? Than if I no. But here's the thing: if I run to him and pick him up and say, oh no, you're fine,
Just
everything will be
that.
great, that's actually just as abusive in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Because what I'm doing two things when I do that. Saying it's fine, you're okay, is denying his emotions, right? I'm telling him how he feels, right? And then number two, I'm creating this sort of feeling in him that he has a safety net always, and that there are no consequences to life, or the daddy will always come save me, right? So when he falls, especially if he takes a risk, I go over, I'm like, hey buddy, are you okay? Right? No, I ask a question, right? Are you okay? Right? And then he can tell you, yes, I am, or no, I'm not, right? So that forces him to actually examine his own feelings and emotions and understand what they are. And then sometimes, like, especially at 4 now, he's getting better at it, but at 2.5, 3, when he was really learning his emotions, sometimes I did as well. Are you feeling sad? Are you feeling depressed? Are you feeling lonely? I had to kind of like maybe help him understand what his emotions were. But at 4, he kind of knows. He's starting to know pretty well. And so really it's just letting him kind of voice those. And then if he needs, like, like you want me to rub it? You want help? And most of the times like, no, I'm okay. And what I'm doing there is not giving him agency, because it's not mine to give. I am showing him he has agency and letting him exercise it so that he understands this is who I am as a man in this world, right? And I do the same thing to my daughter, like letting them understand, giving them the space to exercise their agency, and then to recover from trauma, so that they understand the next time they fall, if no one's around or if they don't have anyone to help them, they can actually do it, right? They can fail and recover. It's possible. Now, the first few times, obviously, with almost anything, you need help, you need encouragement, whatever. That's the other kind of part of I try to do is it's not just, I'm not a big believer in like, oh yeah, let them do anything they want or whatever. I definitely, within certain bounds, total free reign. But then we have a few rules, a few principles really, a few boundaries, and those boundaries are not crossable, and they suffer consequences for that. Again, that teaches them, that's basically the way the world works. There's almost no rules, there's almost no boundaries. The ones that exist and matter tend to be very painful if you cross, but almost all the other boundaries are made up bullshit, right? And so like, it's exactly what I try and teach them, to the point where I go, especially with my son, I go out of my way to tease him and tell him nonsense, right? And part of it is fun and teasing, but the other part is like, I want him to start to understand, oh, wait a minute, just because my dad says something, it doesn't make it true. Just because an adult says something, it doesn't make it true, right? Like all the time, like, all right, Bishop, today you're not going to school. We're taking you to poop camp and you're going to shovel poop all day. He'll say, no, teasing. Like he knows I'm messing with him, right? We'll laugh or whatever. But like he at 4 years old, he understands adults don't have all the answers. Adults can lie. Adults can manipulate. Adults can tease. Adults can play, whatever. Like he questions and he understands the world is a malleable, movable place with a shifting set of rules that I've got to be aware of and I've got to understand. It's not the way that some people think it is, which is, oh yeah, the adults have all the answers and blah, blah, blah. Like parents that helicopter parent actually abuse, that is a form of abuse. No, we try to be the opposite of that.
Man, I appreciate that dialogue so much, because it's probably one of the best pieces of advice that we can give to parents listening, as well as myself. I mean, just that last 5 minutes is absolute pure gold. And I appreciate it, because as obviously a father to an 18-month-old, those two little things that you just brought up, man, is extremely, extremely beneficial. So I appreciate it. I want to get a little bit serious here, and I don't know if you're a man of faith. I don't know, really, who you believe in as far as God. But I want to know, at the end of your day, when you go up to the, pearly white gates, you've had these two polar opposite lives. So I'm so intrigued on what you want the higher power to say to you at the
I
end of your
don't
day?
think they're polar opposite. I think that's a false dichotomy.
Oof.
No, true.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
The
see what you're saying.
commonality, dude, the commonality for them, and I'm not trying to defend everything I did in my former career, because of course I did some shitty shit that, yeah, like, no, that inexcusable, right? I get it. Like, I'm not denying that in no way, shape, or form. But the commonality is I always lived my truth and I spoke it publicly and I stood there and took the consequences.
Hmm.
Always.
What I meant by polar opposite, I meant family man now versus it's 20-year-old and 30 and 40-year-old. That's all it is.
I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean,
You know?
but I see them as developmental stages, man.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
I can see that. Yep.
I don't look at you and say, well, we used to play with He-Man and She-Ra, and you have a business, you're polar opposite lives. No, dude, it's a developmental stage, right? Like, it makes sense. You play with dolls when you're a kid. That's what you do.
Yeah. So,
My
okay. So
developmental stages happen to be public and a business. And
you know what? You're fucking right, Tucker. You're fucking right. Okay. So tell me though, what do you want God or whoever the higher power you believe in, what do you want them to say to you, man?
In what way? What do you mean? What do
Like,
I
you know,
want to be judged on, or
it's the end
what?
of your day. You know, you it's the pearly white gates, and you go up to heaven if that's what you believe in, or wherever it might be. Like, what do you want him or her, the higher power, to say to you? You know, job well done. Like, what is it that you would like to hear come out of their mouth?
I mean, this is gonna sound. Oh, sorry. This is gonna sound super arrogant, but I don't feel like anyone stands in like judgment of me. You know, like, I don't. It's not that I don't recognize other powers or other things or whatever, but I don't recognize some hierarchy that I am in that I need to satisfy or please, other than myself and my family. The people here's the way I frame it. No man can be a hero unless no man is a bigger hero. No man is bigger than what his children think of him. Right? So, like, to me, the better gauge of my life will be when I die, who is surrounding me, and what do they feel?
Man,
That to me is far more important question.
then tell me, what is it? Like, what do you want? Who's
Like,
surrounding you?
my
I
goal
love that.
is
I
my goal.
honestly, Tucker, straight up, like, I love that context behind it, because I'm kind of in the same boat as you. You know what I mean? As far as that feeling, and I just love the way you kind of you didn't twist it, but how you feel, and you're able to articulate it. But so, what do you want them to feel?
So straight up, like, let's say I'm 43. Let's say 40. Let's say I'm lucky. I'm 50% through with my life. At 86, I'm laying in my bed and I'm dying. And if I have my wife next to me, and my grown son Bishop, and my grown daughter Vaughn, and preferably they have kids too, my grandkids, and we got a third on the way now, and we'll probably have a fourth. So all my kids, if they're all surrounding me, and maybe some of my best friends, JT, Zach, whoever, like people lives I've intersected with, if they're surrounding me and they're deeply sad to see me go, and they feel like that a hole will be left in their lives that can't be replaced, and they're glad that I was there at all. What else can you ask for, man? That means you lived a good life.
Thank you.
You know?
I appreciate you going down that road. It's a vulnerable situation to get asked that question, and I appreciate the way that you articulated what you feel, what you want, and really what matters to you, and it's evident in your answer, and I appreciate it. So tell everybody about this chairman. You're the chairman of Book in a Box, right? And you're
The
taking
company
ideas.
the company is called Scribe. Actually, we rebranded in June. We
Okay,
were
so
Book in a Box, exact same company, exact same services, just changed the name. That's it.
okay, and tell everybody what that is, and kind of the concept and context behind it.
Yeah. So basically, we help people turn their ideas into books. Like, if you want to write and publish a book, you come to us. And we basically have a very clearly defined process where we take you from idea all the way through to finished book. And then the two main programs, there's one where you write it yourself with our guidance, all along the entire way. And then we do editing and publishing. and there's one where we can interview you and get the book out of you, your words, your voice, your content, everything.
Fiction, nonfiction, it doesn't matter.
Only nonfiction. Only nonfiction. Fiction's a whole different monster, man. Like fiction and nonfiction are so different. Like they almost shouldn't both be considered books. They're totally different.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Okay, so this is the point in time of the show where I'm going to ask you, or I'm going to say 4 words, one at a time. I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind. It could be a picture. It could be a word. It could be a phrase. Just whatever comes to your mind, the first thing. You ready?
Okay.
All right. Success.
I don't know. Contentment.
Failure.
Just a stop on the way. Like, I mean, actually, no, when you say failure, the thing I think of is there's no such thing. There's only winning and learning.
Yeah, so true. So damn true. Let's go with hustle.
Bullshit.
Mm-hmm. Entrepreneur.
The visionaries who start the things that move the world. They're not usually the ones who run the things that move the world. 2 different skill sets. Like why I have a CEO who runs my company. I started the company and I'm a creative visionary, but without him, we wouldn't be shit. So we need.
Yes, we definitely need them to kind of keep us in line and run the ship. All right, I appreciate it. And I just want to ask you one more thing here. So after the show, everybody has a plan of action. And what I ask of all my guests is for you to give 3 things for them to implement as soon as they're done listening or watching, to implement so they can be better today than they were yesterday. And this could be in any equity of life, man, whether it's health, relationships, just mindset. What are 3 things that they could do in their life to be better today than they were yesterday? I didn't prep you.
3 things. I mean, that's a lot of things. All right. So look, I'll give you some real simple ones.
Perfect.
8 hours of sleep is an obvious one. Most people don't sleep enough. Like that's one of the reasons I'm really productive. The next thing you can do is start, for most people, and I'm dead serious, start therapy or start figuring out a way to understand and connect with your emotions. The third thing, cut sugar and grain from your diet. You do those 3 things, you're going to see, and they're all simple to understand, but actually most of them are not easy to do. You're going to see major changes in your life.
Simple to understand, not easy to do. Yeah, man. Perfect. And cut sugars and grains out. It's insane what that does to you. It is insane. All right, man, tell everybody where they can find you, where they can creep on you, what you have coming up, and where they can go ahead and get your stuff.
Just my company's scribewriting.com. I'm on Twitter, Facebook. It's just Tucker Max. I'm the only one.
The one and the only, right?
Yep.
Is there any last words of wisdom, knowledge you want to drop on them before we head off?
I got a 3:30 call, man. I got to roll.
All right, brother. Hey, look, man, appreciate you. Thank you so much. Guys, make sure you guys subscribe. Go follow Tucker, follow me, and we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.